Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about Webpack, of a new-ish front-end technology that you use to pack your web. So this is before it was cool. It's probably arguable that it's not cool yet, and it will never be cool, but it is used.
It still has to catch up.
What's that?
It still has to catch up a little.
All right, well. With what?
ES6.
Oh, well.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we're using it with ES6 pretty every day.
But it still has to kind of
What is it?
it's up a little bit, but it's supposed to 2.0 still.
Oh yeah, well we're using 2.0. I'll bring that up a little bit later. Okay, sorry. We're getting off track already. You troublemaker. All right, so a little bit about me. That was me before I was cool. Actually, I was a lot cooler back then. VP of Engineering, 1stdibs, at Twid, everywhere online. 1stdibs is an online marketplace for rare and desirable goods. It's curated, so we call it Etsy, or no, we call it eBay for rich people. It's antiques, one-of-a-kind goods, highly desirable things, fine art, jewelry, fashion. We're always hiring as well. We're like full-on JavaScript on the front end. And we're here to talk about Webpack. So what are we talking about? Webpack. I have a bunch of like kind of bullety slides coming up, so I just thought I'd pepper it with some interesting images from 1stdibs of items that are for sale. You can get this nice painting of George W. Bush on a Black Widow spider body for only $475. It's a pretty good deal. So, so these are the topics we'll cover. So why are we talking about Webpack now? It's not even ready yet, you know, evidently. Why 1stdibs went with it. Lessons learned. Then I'll show some code, which is also a config. So that'll be good. And then I'll show a cool tool that we made to help us to pack our web and use Webpack. And there's a Chanel fanny pack for $1,300. Okay, so why Webpack now? What is it? Who's familiar with Webpack? Oh, great. Okay, cool. So it's a front-end module system so that you can write JavaScript and use modular code. You can use other code with it too, like CSS and other things, but generally it's used for JavaScript, and you can transpile and bundle modules that can be used in the current set of browsers that are deployed on the internet today. And if you're, so why should you care? If you're a front-end developer, JavaScript developer, writing JavaScript for browsers and the web, then you should care because you want to write modular code and all the good things that come with modules. But if you're not one of those people, say you're a non-front-end dev, then you may, through necessity, be required to write some front-end code at some point, which happens a lot. And if you're a manager who doesn't write code at all anymore, or very little, then you might have your team doing things, and you need to keep an eye on them and know what they're doing, ask hard questions, and just generally be aware. I argue that it's important to talk about Webpack right now because it's a real foundational technology on the front end. When you sit down and you say, all right, we're going to use Webpack, from that decision, all your other decisions and mistakes and good things will flow, in my opinion. It's like a fork in the road, and it's a fork because it makes it easier to adopt other front-end technologies because it kind of just transpiles everything for you. So you could maybe adopt TypeScript more easily, or Flow, which is Facebook's type checker for static types in JavaScript more easily. And it just, when you choose modules, which weren't a thing in JavaScript until ES6 came along, and then you choose modules, and then you combine that with other tools like Babel, which allows you to write in ES6 and ship that to the browsers that don't support it today. It's like you're writing a whole new language in JavaScript at that point. So to me, it's important. When you choose Webpack, it's more than just what we had before, which was little tools that helped you minify and concat JavaScript. It does a bunch more stuff. I just thought that was cool. And so now I'm going to go through quickly, or maybe relatively quickly, why we got into it at 1stdibs way back in 2014. So at the end of 2013, we had just finished a big sprint where we had taken 1stdibs, which had been a lead generation site, more of an advertising site for the dealers who list items on the site, and we had written a bunch of code really, really fast, grew the team really, really fast to switch over to an e-commerce model. So now people could buy stuff on 1stdibs. And we all were, whew, we shipped all that, it was great, well, awesome. And then we went and looked at all the code that we wrote, and it was a bit of a mess. And we decided that we needed a solution. The team was growing, we needed to do a lot more work on the site. It wasn't maintainable in just using, the old style of we're going to concat some JavaScript together and minify it and use the revealing module pattern and all that kind of stuff. It was just a lot of overhead. It was really hard. So we decided, yeah, let's do a module system, and that will help us. And we looked at what was out there at the time, and Require.js and AMD was the module format that Require.js used. And that AMD stands for asynchronous module definition. We decided we didn't need the asynchronous part of AMD, so we said no to Require.js and AMD. I had been doing a lot of Node work prior to that, and I was really familiar with the module format that Node uses, which is called CommonJS, and that briefly is you can require a module, and then a module exports whatever sort of function or object or methods that it wants to make available to other modules. And so, I liked it a lot. I like that a lot. A lot of JavaScript developers are familiar with it. So we said, okay, let's go with CommonJS. So we'll rewrite all these modules that we had. We had written it in a modular way, but it wasn't modular in the sense that you had the declarative dependencies at the top of the file and things like that. So at first we thought, okay, we'll write our own bundler for this. And then luckily we found Browserify, so we didn't write it ourselves. And so we started using Browserify with CommonJS, and we started porting over all of our front-end code to be CommonJS modules using Browserify to bundle it up. And then we realized, no, let's not use Browserify. Its use case at the time was more single-page app-oriented. And what we had was a suite of single-page apps. So we would, as you surf 1stdibs or the internal screens that our dealers use, you would have a tool like your item upload tool, and then you would have your tool that helped you manage your transactions on 1stdibs, and those were sort of separate single-page applications. And then on 1stdibs.com, we would have our search and browse experience versus the product detail page experience, and those were sort of separate applications as well. So we, one of our developers who's here tonight, Rob Richard, hunted around, and some guy in Germany had this thing called Webpack, and we said, hey, let's try that out, because it had some really obvious ways to configure your code so that you could say, like, I have this one page, it's my product detail page, and it shares a bunch of code with the search and browse page and the home page and our order manager page. And so what I want is really one shared package that I ship on all those different pages. It'll get cached the first time the user comes to the site. And then on all those individual pages, I'll have what's called an entry file just for that page. And Webpack had that stuff already built in. So we started using it in, the first commit was in May 2014. And it was great. We loved it. But we learned some lessons. So the first lesson, I want to stress this, is that code modules are great. There's a reason why, every single language, except for, JavaScript up until recently, has a built-in way to import other bits of code and run it and use it, right? So the dependencies are clearly declared in each module. Makes collaboration much more efficient, especially for mid-sized to large teams. If you're coding by yourself, even if you're coding by yourself, unless you hate yourself in 6 months, then you probably want to, use modules. And then, there's lots more things. Separation of concerns, encapsulation, makes version control easier, et cetera. It's just a lot better. The benefits totally outweigh any problems you're going to run into, especially if you're careful and you listen to my lessons that I'm about to tell you. So at the time when we first picked it up, the code base was fairly immature. So the code base immaturity led to problems. The builds would be slow. We had a pretty large code base. We were probably one of the larger ones at the time. We were using it, so it would be slow, run out of memory, and we had to fiddle with Node to make it work right. And so that just took some time to get around. And then it also had not so great documentation. And so it took a lot of time to dig through all the documentation, Stack Overflow, random tutorials, this and that, tweeting with some guy on Twitter. And this is mostly fixed with Webpack 2 and their new documentation, which is a lot better. So you can go and check out that URL at webpack.js.org. They've really, over the past 6 months, the guy on Twitter, this guy named Sean Larkin, has really helped bring Webpack out from this sort of opaque documentation and no communication, and he really communicates a lot, and he's a real great ambassador for the program, for the project. So the main thing you have to worry about, though, is the bundle bloat. And the main reason why this happens is because it's just essential to how Webpack, in any solution you'll find that takes a bunch of, takes an entry file. Okay, this is where I'm going to enter your code base, and I'm going to start going through all your dependencies and build this whole dependency graph. And when it does that, it's not thinking, I can't ship a 500 megabyte JavaScript file to mobile. I'm just going to do this thing that they asked me to do. And so you can get a 500 megabyte mobile file. So you have to be really careful. It's a real black box. It just kind of does its thing, and you're using NPM and Node, and it's doing its thing. And there's just a lot of things in there after you do all that. And so you need tools to help you look into these bundles that are generated from a tool like Webpack. And I'll show you a tool that we came up with later, and it's cool. So this abstraction of these modules, you're like, cool, it's like, I'm developing on the server. I don't have to worry about this stuff, but you do. It's still being, going over the wire and going to a browser that could be on a phone or wherever. And so it kind of led some of the, just us, our team in general, to kind of have this sort of blindness to the real web primitives. There's actually a source attribute on a script tag that's loading the file. Once you get your tooling all set up, that you're kind of divorced from that a little bit, and you can stop thinking about it in a way. There's the lots of small modules philosophy that is in NPM and Node just exacerbates the situation. On the server with Node, you can load 15 different versions of the same library, and no one cares. It's fine. The code all works. When you're shipping that code to the client, you can't do that. Lots of bad things happen if you ship duplicate dependencies. So you need to make sure you don't do that. So vigilance is required to avoid all these problems. And one of the main problems, and one thing that's not sort of out of the box with Webpack, and this is where I'm about to show some code here, is a way to have these long, you can have eternal caches on things as long as you name them correctly. So here's a configuration right here that will do what I think is the sort of basic case that you need, which is take your libraries. In this case, this is React. put them in a vendor bundle. And then once you have that vendor bundle with a hashed name, right? So the hash comes from the actual content of the bundle. As long as nothing in the bundle changes, the name of that file doesn't change. So you can cache it forever. And then you have your entry files, which is like, you know, one entry per page of your application or per single page application that you have. And that will get hashed too. And as long as no code changes in there, when you run your build again, it should stay the same. If you add entry files, oh, we have a whole new feature. Oh, we need a new entry file. You add it to your Webpack config, generate new files. You get a new file. All the other ones don't change because no code in there changed. And this config will get you there. And it's, I guess these slides go online. We'll put them online. So it's there with a lot of annotations at that URL at the bottom there.
And that's
Webpack 2, right, yeah. And that's all it does, right? It'll make sure that you can run the build over and over and things stay the same. It doesn't do all the other hard parts of like, how do I actually get this stuff on a web page? There's other tutorials for that, and there's some links there to help you out with that too. It just is that, like, I wanted to kind of condense it down into that one little config there. So now I want to go to the tool that we built, and to do that, I'm going to exit full screen mode and show you in a web browser. And here it is. So this, I'll make it a little bigger. So this is this thing that we call Webpeck Charts. It's a really cool name. We hope to open source it later this year. And what it does is you can, it's a plugin that you put in your Webpack config. And when you run your Webpack build, what happens is it uploads a bunch of stats. If you're really familiar with Webpack and you're a Webpack expert, you know you can get this stats.json file out of it. It uploads that thing to S3. And then it also puts that in Elasticsearch in some way or another so you can search it. And then we get that data out. You can search by clicking, where am I at? These things up here, basically. Right, so you say, this is FirstDibs.com master. We want to see the minified file sizes by the day. And then when you roll over here, and then over here you see, it's not showing it, but you pick the files that you want to see. And then these are all their sizes in kilobytes here. And this is gzipped and minified, because you want to know what it is gzipped. If I could get my, oh, there we go. So then you can say, like, oh, this one, foot.js, that's a real big problem right there. It's literally almost 500K. And we load it on every page, so luckily it gets cached right away. And then, so that's FirstDibs.com, bunch of different JavaScript files. And then, so this helps you because you're like, over time, everyone's adding code and adding features and you're putting stuff in there. And you want to know, is it getting bigger, smaller, going sideways, what's happening with it? And this lets you do that. And you see, like, it gets bumped up here and you can say, hey, what happened there? Oh, we added feature X. Well, then we have to do it that way. Maybe we could do it another way, blah, blah, blah. And you can figure out. But at least it gives you the tools to have those conversations before you're just like, I don't know, ship them some code. It's done. And then the other thing that we did was create these little tree maps. And if you're really into Webpack, you might have seen this before, something like this. There's a couple of projects out there that generate these types of tree maps. And this lets you look at a specific bundle. This one's called pdp. The hash up there, .js. I'm really running out of time. And this shows you everything in it. So this is the PDP of this new mobile web application we're writing. And it's pretty good because it shows you there's these node modules here. And it has, this is the node modules. So these are the dependencies in green. And then these are all of our source down here. This lets you change the depth. You kind of go out farther and in. You can select other bundles from this particular project, which is called App Buyer Mobile. This is a cool feature. It shows you duplicates in red. And so this is the vendor, so it's all node modules, so it's just all green. And that lets you then, make a lot of decisions about what you're shipping, know exactly what you're shipping, how big it is, what percentage of what is taking up what in your bundle. And if using Webpack, I really think these things are essential these days. And using Webpack or something like it is becoming very essential these days. So I'm at 0. So that's it for me. Oh, great. So is there time for questions, or should I hang it up? Okay.
Q&A. Thank you very much, by the way.
Oh, great.
That was excellent.
Cool. Yeah.
Questions?
Yeah. So simple. No question.
Should React inform kind of the decision of using Webpack?
0% of our decision was based on using React because we were using Webpack before we were using React. Yeah, we started in 2014, and we didn't start using React until 2016? Something like that? 2015, maybe? End of 2015? But React definitely helped Webpack becoming sort of the default when you eject out of create React app. It's there. Anything else? So cool. So we'll get this. Yeah, that's it. So the slides will be online.
Yes.
Really, you only just need that one URL that was in that one slide, I think.
Well, Tim, thank you very much.
Great. Thanks for having me.
That was excellent.
Okay, cool.